The Veteran Next Door. Here's your host, Randall Baxter.
Welcome to The Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been having a forum that's coming up on May 1. And you folks out there that are listening, grab a pencil. I'm going to give you some phone numbers and things here in a minute, so be ready for that. But we've been discussing how your congregation, if you're involved in one, can be an environment of acceptance for veterans and their families. And, you know, did you know that veterans are 5 times more likely to seek help from their clergy than every VA service combined? And that your congregation could help promote awareness of the needs of those sacrificing their time and effort to support our country. So the title of our forum is When War Comes Home. And today's mission in the story today is we're going to attempt to explain to clergy and to congregations out there listening from the clergy point of view why they should implement a veteran-friendly congregation. You know, you never know who you have in your congregation. A veteran, there's lots of them out there, but you don't know what his personal experiences are and how that has affected him, and that he may have a desire or a need to talk. We were discussing out here, how do we find them? And we discussed that they're not hiding, but they may feel isolation. Isolation is part of post-traumatic stress disorder and TBI also, which is traumatic brain injury. But there's more to it. We're here today to help dispel the fear of engaging this fear in the congregation. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. It's addressing the needs of these families when war comes home. You're listening to Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and we'll be right back.
The Veteran Next Door will return in a moment.
Sun up on a cool, sweet morning. Sausage frying in the pan. Make that sausage always Wamplers. It's the finest in the land. Wamplers, Wamplers, it's great sausage made on the farm in Tennessee. Don't say sausage, just say Wamplers for the best in quality. Make that sausage always Wamplers. It's the best in quality.
Energize, detoxify, and hydrate 6 times faster with Hydrate Alkaline Ionized Water. Hydrate is available at the Veteran Next Door store at 4812 Asheville Highway and also available at your local Knoxville area Walgreens. Bottled at the source in Dandridge, Tennessee, this natural spring water and effective antioxidant reduces acid waste, hydrates cells quickly, and tastes delicious. Hydrate is a veteran-owned business and a proud sponsor of the Veteran Next Door. For more information about Hydrate Alkaline Ionized Water and the benefits it provides, visit www.historicsprings.com. That's historicsprings.com. Try it today.
Statements not evaluated by the FDA nor meant to replace your doctor.
Now back to the Veteran Next Door.
Welcome back. You're listening to Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and today our topic is the third of a series, When War Comes Home. And our first guest today is Freddie Owens, my friend, a Vietnam veteran in one of the first early battles of the Vietnam War, who is also the chairman of the Veteran Friendly Congregation Initiative. Freddie, welcome.
Thank you, man. This morning, we have a couple of individuals here this morning. We have Dennis Levin, who is the co-chairman of the Veteran Friendly Initiative. We also have Ron Morton, who is on the committee also. Dennis is going to talk to us this morning from the perspective of what a veteran-friendly congregation is all about.
Well, thanks, Fred. Yeah, I had the privilege of serving as an Air Force chaplain, and that was a wonderful way to bring ministry to people in military service. What this is really all about, in my mind, is to empower and engage veterans in congregations across Tennessee to take care of the needs of other veterans. For instance, just recently we had about 200 reservists who have deployed back to the war in Afghanistan. Let me assure you, war has come home to those families who are waiting every day to hear word from their loved one, who are now functioning without their family member right in the middle of life as it goes on here in East Tennessee. But their loved one is over fighting a war not in Afghanistan, just like they did in Vietnam. So war has come home to these families. They have needs that are unique. And what we could do if congregations were aware of those needs and getting our veterans engaged and empowered to meet the needs of those families. For instance, while that loved one's gone, there are going to be problems coming up. The lawn needs to be mowed. What if a congregation said, hey, listen, we got your lawn mowed? What if the plumbing goes out? We can help. All the family crises that happen when that loved one is deployed in a warfighting situation, we could help. One of the things I remember about from Air Force chaplain school was this teaching. Our job as chaplains, no matter what our faith tradition is to respond to the area of greatest spiritual need. And the second part of our job was to keep hope alive. What if we as congregations took on that mission for our military families, both veterans and reservists who are deployed, active duty who are deployed, and decided we wanted to do that. We wanted to meet their needs and keep hope alive.
Okay, Ron, could you give us your perspective from a deacon's standpoint of the veterans that you have in your congregation and how your military ministry would be able to help them?
Sure. Last Veterans Day, I had the opportunity to preach a sermon, and during the service that day, I asked all the veterans in our congregation to stand up and identify themselves. And they were shocked, surprised, and certainly they were pleased by that. After the service, one of the veterans came up to me. This is a gentleman who is probably nearly 70 years old. And he said, no one has ever asked me to identify myself as a veteran during any service that I've ever been to, and I've been a member of the Episcopal Church my whole life. In talking with one of the priests who was there to help us out that day, I found out that in some of our churches, we are attending to our veterans, and some of our churches we're not. And I think that the magnitude of the issue is a problem. What do we do as priests, deacons, pastors, preachers, whatever our role is? How do we deal with the magnitude of the issue? It seems to be overwhelming, and certainly it is when we have 22 veterans a day committing suicide. But we have to stop somewhere, and we have to get beyond our fear of dealing with issues that we are afraid will overwhelm us. And this is one of those issues that needs to be included in discussion in all our congregations, and the When the War Comes Home Forum is an opportunity for us to do that.
Thank you, Ron. What you've heard here is what you can do, and what is what's happening within the congregation itself. Let me give you a perspective from my congregation as part of the military ministry, which is we've had in effect for about the last 10, 11 years. The 230th just deployed last week, and doing their first and second deployment, some of the individuals in our church, we helped those families while they were gone. And you'd be amazed at what it was that they really wanted, just for someone to listen to what was being said while they were gone. The kids were taken care of, the wives were more comfortable, and we have to realize now is that they're both men and women that are on the front, that are taking the brunt. And I looked at one of the individuals who were deployed, in the 230th this past week, and one of those individuals, this is his third deployment. And what we want to do is to make sure that those families are taken care of, even though we don't know who they are. But if you're out there, you can contact us here at the Veteran Forum, you can call Pat at this number at 865-253-2794, and we will put you in touch with the proper individual.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. I've just been listening to what you guys have been talking about, and you made a statement, Ron, I think, the magnitude of the issue. Can you go a little further on that? You know, if I go into a church to speak, and I go into a lot of churches just to speak to their congregations about what I do, and sometimes I see pictures on a bulletin board, and it just says pray for this soldier, but it doesn't look like there's anything broader than that. So can you help me out with that? The magnitude, you know, explain the issues.
When I'm talking about the magnitude of the issue, I think I'm talking about what's actually happening to veterans in our congregations who have returned home. But I think I'm also talking about our own issues about war in general. And I think that part of the problem is if you're not a veteran, it's an unreal world. And we've noticed as veterans that when people ask us to tell our story, when we start, we see something change. And I think that it's probably the horror of it, the magnitude of the experience of being a veteran in combat, our personal experiences, those I think can be overwhelming for people who don't understand. And yet we're not really asking people to change us, to change history. What we're asking people to do is to open up, learn to listen, and find simple ways to help military folks in their congregation, especially the family members who are wandering, not knowing what to do about the issues that they're dealing with at home. And many times those issues at home are kept quiet. We're really good in our churches about keeping some issues quiet. And we've got to change that. We've got to be willing to address the elephant in the living room.
I just wanted to give you an idea. This is from the most recent issue of Military Officer magazine. It's talking about a young man named Jay who was an Army Reserve specialist. He was injured in Iraq, shot in the back of the neck. He's left paralyzed. He's on a ventilator. And his mom and dad are his caregivers. They came back. When Jay came back, his mom and dad became the caregivers. And here's what Jay Brazino, his dad, said. After this happened, we haven't been on any vacations. There's no more plans for retirement, and our savings have all been emptied. The RAND Corporation, a nonprofit organization known for public policy research, estimates that out-of-pocket medical expenses for family caregivers are 2.5 times greater than those of their non-caregiver counterparts. The VA estimates or services support only a small portion of an estimated 1.1 million caregivers nationwide. We have injured vets, young people, as well as the elderly that are back and having the results of what happened in the war, and their families trying to care for them, and they need our support. And that's where the congregations need to get engaged in this. And that's why you should call 865-253-2794 to get your clergy person or to get members of your congregation that are veterans involved in this When War Comes Home Forum on May 1st.
Okay. How about you? Anything to add to that?
My only thing I will add to that is it's very, very imperative to get these individuals assistance. And the only way you're going to get assistance is by calling that number and having someone available that can give you the desired information that would put you in touch with the right people.
Okay, so when they call 865-253-2794, they're not going to get their answers. They're just going to get information on how to go and get answers. Is that correct?
That's correct. And they can also call me at any time they want to at 865-405-6345, and I can put them in touch with the individual that they need to be in touch with.
Okay, so that's going to be the topic of the rest of our show. You're listening to Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and we'll be right back.
The Veteran Next Door will return in a moment.
You're listening to The Veteran Next Door Radio, hosted by Randall Baxter. Be sure to check out theveterannextdoor.com to shop online for episodes of The Veteran Next Door information on veterans' benefits, or to find you or your family's military records.
In a world of rising medical costs and shrinking retirement accounts, many vets are concerned about preserving their precious assets, and some are struggling to provide for the basic personal care they need at a time in their lives when they need it the most. Fortunately, as thanks from a grateful nation, our government created the non-service connected disability pension with aid and attendance. It provides qualified veterans and their surviving spouses with a tax-free monthly pension to help defray the cost of long-term care for those who need in-home care, assisted living, or skilled nursing care.
I hope you listened to that ad. Call me on the phone if you've got problems with VA benefits as far as this non-service related disability benefit with aid and attendance. You know, that number is 865-525-2323. But, you know, I want to tell you why. There are 3 ways to learn about your veteran benefits for this particular benefit. One is through your VSO officer at the VA, or you may learn about it from an attorney, or you may call a volunteer veteran advocate like myself. I think it's important that you know the difference between the 3 roles. First of all, the veteran service officers are good guys, and they represent the VA, and they represent you. But you have to remember they are not licensed to give you the proper financial advice to qualify yourself before you present yourself to the Veterans Administration. For that reason, since they cannot give you advice on what to do because they are not licensed, they have to look at you as you are when you walk in the door. That's causing a lot of people to be told that they don't qualify for that benefit. The next issue is attorneys. I'm what's called, again, a volunteer veteran advocate. But you need to know I have the proper licenses to give you the advice that you need to qualify for this benefit. This means that I can tell you whether you even need an attorney or not for your application. Many attorneys are charging veterans up to $400 for the first interview to tell them whether or not they need an attorney. So this is the important part. Your volunteer veteran advocate who has the proper licenses can save you in legal bills and can save you a declination from the Veterans Administration, and it's absolutely free. So why would you pay an attorney, or why would you go to someone who does not have the proper licenses to give you the proper advice before you talk to a volunteer veteran advocate? So if you are a veteran, the surviving spouse of a veteran, or a family member of a veteran who may need these services, call Randall Baxter, 865-525-2323, and schedule an interview. Again, it's absolutely free to get the proper advice that you need. Again, 865-525-2323. I hope to talk to you today.
Now back to the Veteran Next Door.
Welcome back to this segment of Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and we've got some wonderful guests here. Before we get into our topic, and I mentioned it last week, there's a movie out called The Best Years of Our Lives. It's a black and white movie. It's one of the first post-traumatic stress disorder movies that ever came out. And inside the movie, it was about 3 veterans. One was having marital problems that occurred while he was at war. You know, he was happy when he left, but when he came back, he was having marital problems. The other one had terrible injuries, physical injuries. His hands had been burned, and he had mechanical hands. And the third one had a real alcohol problem because he ordered so many men into battle, and they didn't come back, and he was drinking and having a problem with that. So our topic today is, how do we empower congregations to deal with some of these things? And the first thing I want to say is, you don't have to wait until May 1st you can start now. All you have to do is call us and we'll get the information to you. That's 865-253-2794. And we want you to attend a forum that it's not a training exercise, and we can get into more of that here in a little bit. But it's just a way, on May 1st, it's 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and what you'll get out of it are ways to improve and engage veteran needs inside your congregation. So once again, this forum's not here to train the clergy. We're asking the leaders in the congregations to just address the issue. So, Mr. Owens, would you like to expand on that some?
Very much I'd like to expand on that. I'll expand on it from my point of view of a military ministry within the church itself. And what happens is you go to your pastor and you ask your pastor, would he like his congregation to become a veteran-friendly congregation? And what if the pastor says yes, you take it upon yourself to go and seek out those individual veterans that you know in the congregation, and you ask them to sign up to become a part of the ministry. Those individuals will lead you to other individuals in the congregation who can help you also. And what you really want to do is make them a part of the ministry and make the ministry a part of the church itself. In our church itself, we have what we have a prayer group, and we meet on the second and the fourth Sundays, and we pray specifically for those individuals who are in the military, and it lasts about 45 minutes, and all of the members of the military ministry who wants to be part of that prayer ministry, they are present, and we pray for those individuals. Not saying that every church will do this, but it's something that we do within our ministry itself. We also go out and help other members of our congregation who have lost members. We go out and cut grass, and we clean their yards and things of that nature, make sure that they have their food and everything else. So it's not a sit-down ministry. It's a working ministry that empowers those individuals to do things. And if you do things like this, you'll find out that members of the congregation will come to you. You don't have to go to them. They'll begin to come to you. It's like we have a couple of individuals there in the ministry who just found out that they're having a problem with PTSD. And I direct them to the proper individuals in order to get them treatment. So when you do this and it's a continuous thing, they always come back and ask for an individual, and they also go out and help other individuals in the ministry who can help them. So you're training those individuals in your ministry, not the pastor. The pastor is only an informational service, So that's what we do as a part of our ministry. And maybe Dennis, Ron might have some information on that, of what may be happening in their church to help those military individuals also.
Yeah, one of the things I think that most churches do is a couple of times a year recognize, well, at least some churches do. Ron, you were saying that it really isn't all that common. At least a couple of times a year recognize veterans in some way, even to say thank you for your service. But as Ron, you were mentioning, having them stand and say these are folks that have served in the military. Praying for folks is great. And it's wonderful if we can get congregations engaged in regular prayer for folks who are serving now or who have served and are having some specific needs. I'd like to tell a quick story about a gal named Sassy. She was 28 years old. I met her dad earlier this year. Sassy was 28 years old and fell in love with a young Marine who had come back from Afghanistan. They decided to get married, and they got married, and things went well for several months, but then because of what had happened in Afghanistan, some PTSD issues started to hit her husband. And he began to change into someone that Sassy didn't recognize. The marriage started to deteriorate. It ended up on a Saturday night with a young couple arguing. And Sassy left the home, and as she left, her husband pulled out a handgun and shot her 3 times. 4 days later, she died. That same night, he turned the weapon on himself. It was because of PTSD that this happened. That the symptoms of PTSD were all over that family in that situation. her parents, of course, are grieving and are trying to find ways to prevent this from happening to other folks. What if congregations got involved in reaching out to veterans and were able to intervene? What if Sassy had a resource in her congregation to tell somebody, I'm having real trouble, and I think it's related to my husband's service, and what had happened there? Might it have made a difference? I think it possibly could. So it's involving and engaging congregations in looking for people and identifying problems.
If she had gone to the VA, could she have damaged her husband's career, or could she have?
Yeah, a good question. Actually, his career he had actually been in some treatment programs with the Marine Corps, and it hadn't been successful, and so on. So here's another thing that I wanted to point out with Sassy's story. This is from an article in USA Today. Did you know the young veteran suicide rate is more than alarming? Did you know that deaths are occurring at nearly 3 times the rate of those on active duty? And so we're seeing a trend where PTSD and other symptoms of young veterans coming back is just overwhelming the VA system. The VA can't do it alone. That's part of the message, is we need as a community to help the VA by ministries just like Fred was talking about, where we're engaging veterans in our congregation who know other veterans and are reaching out and making contact and helping people like that. Besides that, there are all kinds of benefits for families that are unknown to many veterans, but veterans like the veterans in the Veteran Friendly Congregation Initiative have some resources, some knowledge to help families with VA benefits that can be difficult for them to reach without having somebody who knows how to do that. Fred, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. What we did in our church was that we had 4 individuals who were deployed, and I specifically briefed their wives on what could and could not happen on their return. And on their return, I told the wives, this is what you need to look for. If they go this direction, I need to know. And one of them went that direction, and they were able to get help, both marriage counseling outside of the church and over to the VA system. But you have to know how to navigate the system. If you are comfortable navigating the system with someone who's been there before, then you won't have a problem. And as Dennis said, if you do this in the proper manner, everyone can be taken care of. But it's just a big bureaucracy with the VA system. And if you have your church involved and your ministry involved, you'd be amazed how much help you can do for these individuals who are coming back. But they're not going to the VA. They will seek you out first, especially if they know that you are part of the military and you're there to help them.
Okay. Ron?
I was just sitting here thinking about what it was like for me when I came back, what it's like now. And one of the things that is coming to my mind is that, there are moments when I am really proud of my service. When I hear the national anthem, when I'm around other veterans, I'm really, really proud. And that's different than what it was like when I came back, because I found myself, once I was diagnosed, saying, what did I spend 5.5 years doing? I was confused, and I think our society was confused. And when we're talking about how how we engage our veterans, if we are having difficulty understanding those things that we've been involved in, then certainly our community is confused as well. But that doesn't change the fact that one of the most therapeutic things that can happen is celebrating that veteran, celebrating their service in a fashion that's not being celebrated now. That can be done in many different ways. And one that comes to my mind is to have a board on a church that lists the names of all those in the congregation who served in the military. Whether they were in combat or not doesn't make any difference, because if you were in the military, you accepted the fact that you could be in combat. Something as simple as putting up a board with the names of all the veterans in that congregation creates an environment of acceptance and celebration of the service of those veterans, and also it creates an avenue for linking with the family. It's a more comfortable environment. It's a way to connect veterans with each other, and you may have veterans in your congregation who don't know who the other veterans are. We need each other. We veterans need each other. And doing something as simple as recognizing all those veterans in a congregation opens up many doors to get assistance, either emotional or spiritual.
Here's what a veteran-friendly congregation is. Number one, it's a congregation that is willing to identify who the veterans are in the congregation. Number two, to appoint one or more of those veterans as a point person to empower and get people engaged in a veteran ministry. Number three, and that's actually to come up with a ministry, however you do it. Ron was giving some suggestions here about recognizing and celebrating veterans. That's one way to do it. And Fred's talked about actively engaging veterans by helping those that are deployed with tasks around the home like mowing lawns, all that sort of thing. Finding out ways to get folks engaged in a ministry that help veterans. So real simple. Find out who your veterans are, appoint one of those veterans as a lead person, and then when you get a ministry going that aids those veterans, we want to recognize you publicly and across the state as a veteran-friendly congregation. That's what this initiative is about, is to encourage veteran-friendly congregations and to recognize them publicly. That's the idea.
Okay, and this forum is May 1st, 2014 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Lunch is going to be served, and we're going to talk about that more in the next segment of the show. You're listening to Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and we'll be right back.
The Veteran Next Door will return in a moment.
Are you a veteran? Or maybe your parents or grandparents were? Go to theveterannextdoor.com. That's theveterannextdoor.com for access to past military records, information on the aid and attendance benefit, or to order past copies of the show. That's theveterannextdoor.com. That's theveterannextdoor.com. Check it out. You'll be glad you did. Stories told and retold from the battlefronts of America's wars by the veterans themselves. The Veteran Next Door. You love the show. Now, get the book. World War II, Volume 1, 1939 to 1946. Read about how our veterans attempted to free children trapped by fascist countries. Learn about the supermen we sent to liberate the world from the crimes of World War II. Stories of Pacific land battles on the land and the sea, battles in Europe, land in the air, survival in the ocean, when a ship sinks and one breaks in half, soldiers who deserve the Medal of Honor, and read the story of the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, when many soldiers came home and had to deal with a corrupt county government and prove the need for our Second Amendment. Stories told and retold from the battlefronts of America's wars. Be sure to get your copy at Amazon.com. The Veteran Next Door, Stories from World War II, Volume 1, 1939 through 1946. Don't miss one word of The Veteran Next Door.
You know, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the book I've written, The Veteran Next Door, 1939 to 1946. You know, it's interesting how sales are going on the book. You know, I'm getting orders for 4, 5, and 6 copies for a family. And people are starting to say, you know, I want my children to learn about World War II without all the battles and without all the generals and everything. Just learn about World War II from the people who were involved. You can go to Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble and order the book, but for the same price and get autographed copies for you and or members of your family. You can call my office at 865-525-2323 and get your autographed copy today. Just call 865-525-2323.
Now back to The Veteran Next Door.
Welcome back to the Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and Ron Morton, I think you have something to say before we get into this next segment.
I want to talk about why we are here in this room, working very, very hard to move forward with something that we believe is important. And we wouldn't be doing that, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have a personal connection. And the experience of living with PTSD and all those things that go along with it, substance abuse, relationship problems, it's a dark time. You walk in darkness sometimes for years, sometimes 5 years, 10 years, never really seeing any light and just struggling from one day to the next. And in my case, I was fortunate enough to get diagnosed. I got involved with some men in a 12-step meeting because I had substance abuse problems, and I began to connect with spirituality in a way that I hadn't before. Substance abuse, darkness, insanity, that was what my life was about. And then suddenly someone said, look at God. Look at God. Look at spirituality. What's missing there for you? And I followed that path, and it led me to a path down a road to Native American belief systems. I've been a part of that for a long, long time. I still am. And eventually brought me to the church, organized religion, the Episcopal Church. And there was a time when I would have said I'd never go there. But there was a moment of spiritual clarity for me during a communion service. I could not ignore the presence of God in my life. My life was good. God was there. He was using me. It was affecting people around me in a positive way. That's what we want for our veteran brothers and sisters. That experience of connecting with the God, Jesus said, love your neighbor as I have loved you. That's what the church needs to do, to create that link between a veteran and God. There has to be love involved. And if we didn't love each other as veterans, if we didn't love the idea of that spiritual connection, we wouldn't be here. But of critical importance is the value, the impact that it's had on our own personal lives, that connection with God. Whether it's, a Jewish God or a Muslim God, makes no difference. We've got to find a way for our veterans to end their walk in darkness, to connect with God. Freddie?
Ron made a very good point about the spirituality aspect of this, and I can relate to every point that he made. My turnaround point was 9/11, when I lost another guy that was in the towers, and his name was Rick Briscola. And I was up in Virginia, and when I came back, I was in one of those modes that you'd never, ever think about. And I promised myself I wouldn't walk back in a church, but I ended up doing that. And one of my pastors were able to put me back on that spiritual road to recovery, and that's why I'm here today. Tom Gage here is another veteran. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he's retired U.S. Army Sergeant Major. So, Tom, tell us your story about how it is that you came to be.
Well, I've been with different groups going back to 1997. And initially, like so many other veterans, I was reluctant to involve myself, thinking that they couldn't help me. It's not just the church. You have to also have the ability to share with the veterans like yourself. So often there's so much pride of veterans toward their country. This is a great nation, but oftentimes the wartime experiences remain buried within these veterans, and it needs to come out. And in an environment that is comfortable for the veteran may put on a facade. You've seen them. You may be that veteran, You turn and you put on a smile and you pat the people around you on the back and everything is great. But as soon as you're away from those people, the loneliness, the pain, the suffering surfaces. And you take it home with you, where the outsiders don't see it, but the family experiences it firsthand. Many times that causes a verbal breakdown. The veteran feels it's best not to say anything. On the other hand, he may take and share that pain and suffering in a negative sense. May turn to drugs, may turn to alcohol, and the worst thing he can or she can do is turn to suicide. That is the ultimate failure. And that's why we veterans are here. Because of this group that I'm part of, they have gone through those things that I have mentioned. And the suffering doesn't go away until you're able to share with other vets and seek the help. Now, we're not counselors at all. We are individuals who look at those veterans, our fellow veterans, and know that there are programs out there that offer the kind of help that you need. And in that instance, we need to take and connect with you and take and make sure that it is placed in your hands, that the help is there and you're in put into a program. You can't resolve the problems yourself. You've been doing it too long. Vietnam veterans are still trying to escape it. And now we have the Mideast crisis that we've been involved with for over 10 years. Please believe me when I say that the first thing you need to do is come to a point where you understand there are means to get you the help, and we are that means. And the congregation of your church, oftentimes you're not going to go to church, as we've talked about. You're going to find other means to stay away from the church. If that be the case, still, you need to come forward. You need to contact. And the congregation needs to contact you, be it a family member, be it a stranger on the street. If there's an individual wearing a Vietnam veteran or a Mideast veteran being from Afghanistan or Iraq, that is saying how proud they are. Many times they don't know what's available to them. Now, at some point in time, I have tried with my twin brother for over 10 years. I sent for his military records, got all the paperwork done for him to get into the VA. He didn't feel the need. He thought it was going to be a situation where he's going to have to wait in long lines and be lost in the crowd. Hardly. The Veterans Administration is a professional organization, and the other corporations and that we're involved with, they're all professional, and they have appointments, and they are very thorough in seeking to get to the basis of your problem. You just have to let them do it, and that was something my twin brother couldn't do. And on April 5th, almost 4 years ago, he died. I just talked to him a few days before that. And if he had gone and done what I had been trying to get him to do for 10 years, he may still be with us. But he died of a massive heart attack because he didn't take the time to go and have himself seen by the VA. And I remember how hard it was on the family, and it still haunts us to this day. And I look at his wife and family left behind. she was dire straits financially. Unfortunately, there are opportunities for a widow to be helped by the programs that are available. And it's our duty to identify them and give them that shot in the arm. There are VA programs, there are other local programs. And in the case of my twin brother, I took and put his widow in for a VA widow's pension, which she is now receiving. Without that, she was penniless. So I ask that you take that time and step forward and appeal to you, the congregation, to go out and find these individuals. It's so vital. Don't try to resolve the problem. You're not a psychiatrist. I'm not a counselor. But we have the ability to get them the help they need.
Thank you, Tom. Now, that's what you call being Mr. Veteran on the spot of helping your family. The same thing can be said for my family also, because I was in that same situation with my brother about 3 months ago. He didn't want to get into the VA system, and when he called me, it was on a Sunday evening, and 3 weeks later, he had passed away. He passed away on Veterans Day. And it's amazing what you can do to help your families when there is time. But right now, time is of essence. It is of major essence.
Freddie, and I'm a non-veteran, so sometimes I don't feel like I should speak, but as a sales trainer and as a business person, when I go in and even agents in my industry come to me and they go, I need help, first thing I want to do is I want to find out what they're willing to tolerate. You know, so if a veteran is out there tolerating these feelings, you know, it becomes an issue, or it gets worse. The same thing is true even with non-veterans. Anybody that's got a problem like that, it's their toleration levels and what they do to deal with those toleration levels. But what I'm hearing so far is that veterans, not all veterans need help, but veterans can help, and they can communicate, and they can coach, and they can share, and they can teach. And that's where I like the motto that you guys have: each one, reach one, teach one. So I guess we're going to have to wrap up the show here, but I want to thank you guys for coming in. You're listening to The Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and I'll be right back.
The Veteran Next Door will return in a moment.
Energize, detoxify, and hydrate 6 times faster with Hydrate Alkaline Ionized Water. Hydrate is available at the Veteran Next Door store at 4812 Asheville Highway and also available at your local Knoxville area Walgreens. Bottled at the source in Dandridge, Tennessee, this natural spring water and effective antioxidant reduces acid waste, hydrates cells quickly, and tastes delicious. Hydrate is a veteran-owned business and a proud sponsor of the Veteran Next Door. For more information about Hydrate Alkaline Ionized Water and the benefits it provides, visit www.historicsprings.com. That's historicsprings.com. Try it today.
Statements not evaluated by the FDA nor meant to replace your doctor.
Now back to the Veteran Next Door.
Welcome back to the closing of the Veteran Next Door show. Freddie, what's up?
Why don't you give us your express your opinion about yourself in the group this morning?
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, for having me. And I want to thank the group for accepting me, loving me, and asking me to do things a year ago I could never imagine. And I couldn't, I know the Lord Jesus Christ walked through the door, like I said last week, and delivered me into their arms. And I immediately felt love when I went in there, and they know I love every one of them. But I have learned today now what I can go back and say to congregations, and I've already been asked to speak at one church, so maybe we can build from there.
The thing that motivates all of us is love, and it's the love of God coming through our lives and coming through the lives of the congregations and the people here in East Tennessee that reach out and engage the needs of veterans. You know, churches have all kinds of ministries that focus on unique needs. This one, we're encouraging through the Veteran-Friendly Congregation Initiative for churches to willingly sign up and get veterans focused as their needs. Now, next week, coming up in the next program, we're going to talk about the Veteran Treatment Court, which goes hand in hand with the Veteran-Friendly Congregation Initiative. And we'll tell you more about that. But to get your congregation involved right now, call 865-253-2794. That's 865-253-2794.
You know, this is a group of veterans that are not waiting on their government. They're not waiting on anybody. They're functioning independently because they know, because of their personal experiences and the problems that they have had, that they have the answers to help guide you or coach you into solving problems that you may have with post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury or anything. Tune in next week for Veterans Court. You're listening to Veteran Next Door. I'm your host, Randy Baxter, and we'll see you next week.
I never was a soldier, but I played one as a child. History was good to me. I grew up free and wild.
You've been listening to Randall Baxter and the Veteran Next Door.